An elderly woman walks into a bank, hoping to fix a simple mistake. But what happens next? Pure humiliation. Dismissed. Ignored. Until a voice cuts through the chaos, deep, steady, impossible to ignore. And standing at the door is Clint Eastwood. But he's not just here to speak up. He's about to expose something much bigger. Stay till the end, because this is a story of justice you won't forget. And before we begin, hit that subscribe button so you never miss another powerful story. The bank was crowded. Long lines and murmurs of complaints created a tense atmosphere. Employees rushed back and forth trying to manage the chaos, but their attention seemed to gravitate more toward the wealthier patrons, the ones who could be processed quickly and sent on their way. Among the crowd, an elderly woman stood near the back, clutching an envelope with trembling fingers. Her name was Maggie Thompson, and what seemed like a simple administrative error with her account was, to her, a matter of survival. Rent was due, groceries were running low, and she couldn't afford to wait another week for some banker to sort out her missing check. But no one seemed to notice her. Just another old woman standing in the way. Taking a deep breath, she stepped forward, hoping for a resolution. But Maggie was about to face something far greater than just bureaucracy. The bank teller, Brittany Parker, a young woman with a tired and impatient expression, glanced up briefly before continuing to type on her computer. "Good afternoon, ma'am. How can I help you?" Her voice was flat, indifferent. Maggie adjusted the envelope in her hands and took a deep breath. "Good afternoon. I'm here because my account has some charges that I believe are incorrect. I brought everything I could to try to understand why." Brittany finally looked up from her computer, but her gaze was indifferent. She took the envelope mechanically and began flipping through it with little effort before pushing it back toward Maggie. "Let's see." "Ah, here it is," Brittany said nonchalantly. "These charges are standard, ma'am. They're all listed in your account agreement." Maggie felt a pang of helplessness. "I can't afford these fees," she explained, her voice shaking. "This must be a mistake. I was never informed about these charges." Brittany sighed, rolling her eyes, drawing the attention of a few people nearby. "Ma'am, maybe you don't understand how things work these days. Banks have policies and these fees are automatic. There's nothing I can do." Her tone dripped with disdain. Maggie felt belittled. That response not only dismissed her problem, but also made her feel incompetent. She tried to hold back the tears threatening to fall. "I just want what's fair," she whispered. Brittany crossed her arms and gave a slight smirk. "Fair? If you want to avoid these fees, ma'am, you need to keep more money in your account. That's how it works." The public humiliation had begun. Customers nearby whispered among themselves, their glances flicking toward Maggie as she tried, in vain, to maintain her composure. "It can't be like this," Maggie said, her voice trembling. "I just want to better understand what happened." Todd Murphy, the branch manager, walked toward the counter with firm steps. His presence commanded attention, and Brittany immediately straightened her posture as if trying to appear more efficient. "Is there a problem here?" Todd asked, his voice firm but dismissive. He cast a quick glance at Maggie before shifting his focus to Brittany. "No, sir," Brittany said quickly. "Just a customer having trouble understanding the account policies." Maggie, already visibly uncomfortable, tried to interject. "That's not it. I believe there's been a mistake with my account. I'm just trying to get it resolved." Todd raised his hand, silencing her before she could say more. His expression remained cold, indifferent. "Ma'am, if you think there's been a mistake, you should have read the contract before opening your account. Everything is very clear for those who pay attention." Maggie stood still for a moment, taking in his harsh words. She had always maintained her account in good standing. These charges had come out of nowhere. "I've always kept my account in good standing," she said quietly. "These charges appeared out of nowhere. All I'm asking is for someone to review them." Todd let out a brief, almost mocking laugh. "Review? What's in the system is in the system. We don't review something that's automatic." Maggie searched the room for any sign of support, but the other customers either avoided eye contact or whispered among themselves. The weight of the situation was almost too much to bear. Todd leaned slightly over the counter, his gaze sharp and condescending. "If you can't afford the fees, maybe this bank isn't the right place for you." Maggie opened her mouth to respond, but indignation and shame made her words stick in her throat. She looked down at the envelope in her hands, feeling utterly defeated. Todd, satisfied, adjusted his tie and turned away, considering the matter closed. And that was when a deep, measured voice sliced through the tension. "She ain't going anywhere till she gets a real answer." The entire bank fell silent. Conversations halted. The faint hum of machines was the only sound left. Heads turned, eyes searching for the source of the voice. A man stood near the entrance, hands tucked in his coat pockets, his presence commanding without effort. As he took a slow step forward, the light revealed his sharp, weathered features. Clint Eastwood. A murmur rippled through the room. A few customers exchanged glances, whispering to each other as recognition set in. Brittany swallowed hard. Todd, clearly irritated, turned to face him, arms crossed tight. "And who the hell are you to butt in?" Todd snapped. The man took another step forward, slow and deliberate, before pulling off his gloves and placing them neatly on the counter. The weight of his gaze settled on Todd like an unspoken challenge. "The problem ain't me," Clint said, his voice steady, deliberate. "It's you thinking it's okay to treat an old lady like dirt." Todd hesitated. His posture stiffened, and for the first time, uncertainty flickered across his face. Todd shifted uncomfortably, his confidence slipping. "These are just policies, Mr. Eastwood. There's nothing I can do." Clint tilted his head slightly. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes were razor sharp. "Policies?" he said slowly. "Or just an excuse to shake people down?" No one dared to speak. The entire bank seemed to be holding its breath. Todd swallowed hard and turned to his computer. His fingers hovered over the keyboard, hesitant. Then, reluctantly, he started typing. Brittany, who had been standing silently, shifted nervously. Her earlier arrogance had faded, replaced with unease as she glanced at Todd, waiting for some kind of reassurance. The bank was so quiet that the clicking of keys sounded deafening. Todd's jaw clenched as he scrolled through the data, his face growing visibly paler with each passing second. His hand trembled slightly as he reached for his tie, loosening it as beads of sweat formed along his hairline. "These fees," he stammered. "They've been applied to hundreds of accounts, mostly elderly customers." A hush fell over the room. A few customers exchanged uneasy glances. The reality of the situation began to sink in. Clint exhaled slowly, the weight of his presence pressing down on Todd like an unspoken threat. "That ain't a mistake," Clint said, his voice calm but firm. "That's a scheme, and you know it." Todd's mouth opened and closed as if searching for words. His hands balled into fists before quickly unclenching. I can fix this right now," he blurted out, his voice higher than before. Clint leaned forward slightly, his gaze locked onto Todd's, his voice carrying the finality of a man who didn't make empty threats. "Not just for her," Clint said. "For everyone." Todd stood frozen. He knew he had no choice. The truth was out. Hours later, the bank released an official statement, reversing the charges for every affected customer. Todd and Brittany were fired on the spot. Maggie didn't just get her money back, she got her dignity back. But Clint wasn't done yet. Slowly, he reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. With one tap, he started recording. The lens focused on Todd's pale, sweating face. "What you're hearing," Clint said, his voice steady, "is a bank manager admitting to overcharging elderly customers. That sound like an accident to you?" Todd's breath hitched. He raised his hands in desperation. "Wait, please don't do that. We can fix this. I can fix it right now." His voice cracked under pressure. Clint didn't move. His gaze remained locked on Todd, unyielding. "You'll fix it," he said, his tone like steel. "But the world's still gonna know." A hush fell over the room. The weight of Clint's words settled in. Employees exchanged uneasy glances. A few customers took out their phones, recording the scene themselves. Todd swallowed hard, his face drenched in sweat. He looked at Brittany, but she was frozen in place, staring at the ground, offering no help. Later that week, the video went viral. Millions watched as the truth unfolded before their eyes. The bank faced an official investigation. Authorities stepped in, demanding audits, forcing executives to answer for the corruption. Policies were changed, ensuring no elderly customer would ever be exploited like that again. Todd's career was over. His name became synonymous with corporate greed and dishonesty. No bank, no institution would ever trust him again. And Clint Eastwood? He had already moved on, disappearing into the world once more, leaving behind nothing but justice in his wake. As Maggie stepped out of the bank, she paused for a moment, turning to Clint. Her voice was steady, but filled with gratitude. "Thank you." Clint gave a small nod, his expression unreadable but firm. Nobody deserves to be treated like that. Maggie held her envelope a little tighter. She had walked into that bank feeling powerless, but now she walked out with her head held high. The weight of humiliation had been replaced with something else: dignity. Inside the bank, the atmosphere had shifted. Customers who once ignored her now watched with quiet respect. Employees who had dismissed her now stood awkwardly, realizing they had been complicit in something far bigger than they understood. That day, Maggie wasn't just another customer. She became a symbol of resilience. And Clint? He reminded everyone that doing the right thing isn't about fame or power. It's about standing firm when it matters most. The bank thought they could take advantage of someone who wouldn't fight back. But they underestimated the power of truth and the presence of a man who never backed down from injustice. And just like that, Clint Eastwood disappeared into the world again, leaving behind yet another story of justice, dignity, and respect. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more inspiring stories. And remember, respect and justice should be the only rules we follow.